Welcome back at WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. We are merging our sports brand with our Baltimore Positive brand. You'll hear some Don Moeller here this week. You'll hear some news, some music, some politics, some information, some education, but you're certainly going to hear a lot about the Baltimore Ravens and their big win over the Cleveland Browns, as well as me heading to Houston for football for no one. Before I get started, Luke, you and I started doing these Zoom things, and I haven't rated your room yet, but did that city behind you come before or after Zoom? Has that always been on the wall there?
That's always from the time I bought my grandparents' house. Yeah, I got it probably later that year. So I bought the house in 2017. So I've had it about 3 years.
Nice. Well, Room Raider,
Yeah.
you get a big thumbs up because I thought you may have done that for our audience. I've been taking these questions on the internet. For me with Lamar and what happened on Sunday, and and the national media is going to be all over this. We're going to hear it all week, right? With this Houston game coming up at 4:00. It's going to be then Monday night. I guess they think it's going to be 2 undefeateds on Monday night here 2 weeks from now or whatever. That'll be a night that I'm angry I gave you the seat in the press box because, I want to be there for that one. But with Lamar, the fact that he's getting better, the fact that you even said earlier, he's only lost like 3 regular season games since this whole thing started. Like the fact that they're winning by 4 touchdowns and the fact that Vegas can now sort of count on the home field advantage to still be okay for the Ravens against the Browns, even though nobody's there. But this is a kid that's probably got a really bad taste in his mouth about losing those January games, right? And far worse than you and me or anybody else and everybody else that's been associated with us the last 2 years, that there was a little pissed off for greatness going on with the whole franchise through all of this, I think, on Sunday and beating the Browns, and whether they maintain that on the road to Houston and back against the world champions until further notice, right? That the next couple of weeks we're going to learn a lot, but the one thing I feel like I've learned is, and Moeller's texted me saying maybe Lamar might be generational, and I'm thinking, and we'll be talking about that, but I'm thinking the one thing we can count on for him is he really cares a lot. He's going to improve, and he's going to work on the things that the criticisms come in that aren't good enough about him. He's a guy who wants to shut critics up without having to be a loudmouth about it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, you're talking about someone who won the Heisman Trophy at age 19. Yeah, you're talking about someone who was hearing suggestions even from former NFL general managers that he should become a wide receiver. I mean, just think about that, where he is just a couple years later. And I'm not picking on anyone. We all have blind spots and make have bad opinions and bad evaluations, even with NFL executives. I mean,
I went through 4,851 of your blogs,
okay,
to transfer here. And I found, this will make you laugh, because I'm seeing like headlines that say things like Gaussman and things like Weeders and like going back into our archives. And there was a headline that said something like Jackson questionable to start. And I went back and I'm like, what Jackson was that? Like, I'm thinking it was Asa. We've come a long way.
The glory days. Yeah, I mean, the glory days of having 1.5 cornerbacks on the roster. Now they have 4 or 5 every year. But, I mean, he's really, really good. And, I said this at times last year, and I felt that again watching him on Sunday. I don't know if he's generational in the sense that he's going to become Tom Brady and win 5 or 6 Super Bowls, but he's generational in the sense that he is so unique. And the running ability is one thing, but then when you couple that with what he is able to do as a passer, I mean, John Harbaugh said it again on Sunday. Greg Roman has talked about it, even going back to Lamar's rookie year, how well he sees the field. You go back and look at some of the throws he made on Sunday. His first option was covered, and he doesn't panic. He doesn't force it. He moves his feet the way you're supposed to move your feet in the pocket. And I don't even mean taking off and running, just moving your feet to look to your next option in your progression, and he hits the guy. There were instances, and Marquise Brown talked about this after the game, where Lamar will throw it to someone who's covered, but he throws it in a way that he's able to throw, they call that throwing a receiver open. You're covered, but the quarterback throws it in a spot that the defender is not going to be able to make a play on the ball, and you can. I mean, the best quarterbacks are able to do those things. And so as much as we've been so obsessed with trying to dwell on what he doesn't do as well, throwing outside the numbers, throwing the ball down the field, although he threw the ball down the field really well on Sunday. If you look at his throws of 10 or more yards through the air, but for all those, and as I say, relative weaknesses, because he's improved a lot in those areas too. They're not really weaknesses in the way you compare them to your average quarterback. They're just relative weaknesses for him compared to the things he does at the absolute highest level. But we dwell so much on the things that are questions about him, and now the biggest one is what happens in January. And as I said in our previous segment, we're not going to know that for 4 months. I mean, he can have the absolute best season in NFL history from a quarterback. He could throw 50 touchdowns this year and still run for over 1,000 yards. And there are going to be detractors that are going to say, well, what about January? And guess what? Even though that would be unfair to a point, they're still right until he goes out and says otherwise in January. But
there's a lot of guys that had trouble with that. Dan Marino's still struggling with that, right? I mean,
no question.
And as much as we give all glory to Joe Montana, he didn't win 15 Super Bowls, right? So, and ditto Tom Brady, like literally, right? Who, by the way, this is the weirdness of week one, right? Ryan Jensen and I are Facebook friends, okay? Like, so I see his wife, I see his kids, I see Colorado, I see Tampa. And literally on whatever, Wednesday or Thursday, his kid popped up on my timeline as kids do, right? Lunchbox, going to school. His kid is like going to pre-K. And the last time I saw his kid, I was having dinner at Burnt Steakhouse with him and Stephanie, and the kid was as big as the phone. Like the kid was this big. So we were back and forth on, I say, man, wow, kid's getting big. Yeah, kid's getting big. And the next time I see him is on the 4 o'clock game on TV, and he's like snapping the ball to Tom Brady. And like it didn't even occur to me that like to put one with the other.
Yeah.
that I haven't put that together yet until Sunday. And I'm like, oh, Jensen goes to work with Tom Brady every day. How about that?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because there was a big discussion earlier in the year about when they were doing some of their, some of the players were getting together in Florida, about Ryan Jensen being the center, knowing that centers sweat a whole lot, knowing that the quarterback is putting his hands in a certain position for that center, especially playing in a hot climate. There was a discussion about Tom Brady with towel placement, literally for Ryan Jensen to place his towel in a certain area where it's not quite as swampy then for the quarterback. There was a big discussion about this on social media back, I forget what it was, May, June, whenever it was. So it's funny you bring that up. But yeah, I mean, that's
for you to use the word swampy, in regard, and this is one of the really unique parts of my life that maybe one day I'll write about, having been around this, because we may never be next to a football player again or in a locker room or have the kind of access that I've had for 20 years to be in the locker room pretty quickly. I mean, a lot of times you'll be at the press conference. I will go right in the locker room first thing, and most guys still have their uniforms on. And in the grass era, right, where there's a lot of grass and a lot of water and a lot, like swampy would be the encompassing embodiment of all football totality on sweaty days in Tampa, Florida. I would agree. Swampy would be the word I would use for that. But, figuring out who's where, and Gronkowski's there, and who's the quarterback. My wife and I played the game, where is Andy Dalton? We played that game. And Dallas is the answer. When we got, where is Mike McCarthy there? My wife did not know at 6 p.m., 7 p.m. that Joe Flacco was a Jet, as an example. Like, it just didn't happen for her in the way that it didn't happen for me. I'm trying to figure – there's still a few coaches, and I'm scratching my head saying, what's going on there? And Joe Douglas with the Jets, and trying to figure out who the good teams are, which I think you sit around and say, well, there's no shocker that the Browns probably suck and the Ravens are good. I guess the other things we learned over the week, the Redskins, I can't call them that anymore. The WFT, the WTF, whatever they are, they won. What's up with the Eagles? And then my wife's like, hey, isn't Schwartz still the defensive coordinator there? And I'm like, yeah. But I'm trying to figure out all the seats in the parade. It's been a really weird offseason in that way because this is what I do for a living or have done forever. I would think a lot of people are a little more removed than maybe they would have been before Sunday when they got in the chair and said, where's my beer? Where's my Rofo? Where's the cheesesteak from Pizza John's? Where's my crab cake? Whatever your thing was for football, you kind of came back to it for a day. And I think we all had a senior moment, a 2020 moment to say, oh, I hadn't thought about this much lately.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I would even say, full disclosure myself, not so much the last month because I've been, kind of submerge myself into covering the Ravens training camp and kind of looking at the AFC North and what have you. But back in, when the sports world, the entire world shut down in March, those first 2 or 3 months, I mean, okay, free agency was a fun diversion. The draft was a fun distraction. The schedule release was a fun distraction, but there was always that sense of, is this going to be real? Is this going to happen? And so if I'm saying that, and I'm saying that as someone that's part of my livelihood being connected to that, certainly fans, I think there are certainly fans that are going to have, some of those blind spots, so to speak. And there's always some of that. I talk to you about this all the time that, we follow it to a degree that not every fan follows it. There are different degrees of fandom. You have your people who show up and turn the game on Sunday or go tailgate on a Sunday morning under normal circumstances. And you have people that are looking for the injury report every day and listening to John Harbaugh's Monday press conference and knowing that Wednesday's the big media day and knowing what the schedule's like when it's a Thursday game as opposed to a Sunday game. So, I mean, you have all of that, but yeah, there's some differences. And I said this before, I'll still caution to not draw too many conclusions based off of week one. I mean, I already went on the record at WNST.net. I'm picking the Ravens to win the Super Bowl this year. That's just how I feel about it. Do I think they're going to go 14-2 or 15-1 or 16-0? No. I picked 12-4, but I think they're going to win the Super Bowl. So what I saw on Sunday didn't surprise me in any way. There weren't any takeaways that really were jarring to me. You talk about a couple individual players. Some look better than others. Other guys didn't play as much as maybe I would have anticipated. But overall, that product that was out on the field was very much in line with what I thought. But I think it's you have to be careful in week one. I feel like we have this discussion every year, and this is truer than it's ever been, given the circumstances of no spring, given the circumstances of no preseason, whether you're talking about a brand new head coach like a Kevin Stefanski, whether you're talking about a team like Tampa Bay, who I still think has a lot of talent, but 43-year-old quarterback in a new system for the first time, new head coach for the first time, there's going to be some growing pains, and there are going to be some teams that look really lousy in week one who end up being really good. And then there are going to be other teams who really surprise, like you mentioned, the Washington football team kind of, beating Philly, that not many people were anticipating that. And I'm guessing they're probably not going to be very good at the end of the day because I know the history of that franchise. But that's what makes this fun. And there is more unknown than ever. I mean, there really is in that way. And I think if bringing it back to the Ravens, what was encouraging about this was some of the rookie contributions that they got. Not that, I mean, I think some people look at J.K. Dobbins, the 2 touchdowns, and say, oh, wow, that's amazing. Well, he only rushed for, what was it, 22 yards. I mean, it's not as though he had a big day, but you did see the flashes. And I thought it was interesting that he started the second half over Mark Ingram, actually. I thought that was an interesting footnote over the course of the whole day. Tyree Phillips starting at right guard. Was he Marshall Yanda? Of course not. But the fact that he stepped in there week one, maybe it says more about everyone else than it does about him, but he's the guy there, and you hope that he's going to continue to grow. And he did come on as training camp went on. Devin Duvernay and James Prochet in the return game, and Malik Harrison. Everyone talked about Patrick Queen, and Malik Harrison had kind of a quiet training camp. He ends up starting at inside linebacker next to Patrick Queen. So, not that.
Well, it feels like Tavon Young's a rookie to me. You know what I mean? Like a really good one, right? Like, I mean, he's just been gone for so long, and then you see him hit somebody, and you're like, all I could think about, I reach for my phone to tweet, like, they always love that kid. You know what I mean? They love that. You talked about that kid the first day in August like a couple of years ago as that's the kid that he's standing out, and here he is after injuries and all of this, and still out there making plays in the first quarter, right, in 2020.
Sure, but I think you look at what they were able to get from their rookies in week one. That was pretty good to see because honestly, and I still feel this way to a degree. And again, some of these contributions I just mentioned were relatively modest. I mean, even Patrick Queen, who led the team in tackles and had the sack, had the forced fumble, he a couple times got lost a little bit in coverage.
Dude,
He got
modest is a
stiff-armed
whole
at one
lot better
point.
than developmental squad, right?
Well,
Because literally, right?
But the circumstances this year, especially not having a spring, these guys not even having a preseason game. I mean, it's one thing to talk about Calais Campbell or even Lamar Jackson at this point not having a preseason game, but you think about the progression for Patrick Queen or J.K. Dobbins or Tyree Phillips trying to replace a Hall of Fame right guard, in my mind, to go from playing in college last year and okay, they had a good chunk of the pre-draft process before the world got turned on its head. But to go from that to remote meetings and individual workouts that you were doing on your own, and whether you were in Ohio or Florida or California or wherever you were in the spring, to then go into training camp and not even have a preseason snap, not even have a tune-up as a rookie. You always hear about that progression for the speed of the game. I mean, you went from 0 to 70 and just like that. I mean, that's challenging.
Does
And
it
I
not
think
say how well coached these guys are? It really does speak. And I'm not here to slobber up on Harbaugh. And you and
sure.
I, don't. We've given John a fair amount of criticism over the years. Probably one of the reasons he gets along with me. But this is the point where you really can slobber up a little bit, because I'm not the one that slobbers up. Every time we're going to have John McClain on this week. We're going to get down to Houston. We're going to talk to Steph Stradley and Mark Vandermeer, and it's going to be all Texans. And I'm going to have Dave Zastidal on this week. For all of them are going to slobber up about how this really starts with Steve and Dick and John and Eric and Ozzie and just all that the organization is. And this is the result, that they look like they're ready to play football even against all odds, right?
Sure. And I mean, to go back to the rookies, that's not me saying that they're all going to be great and that they're all going to be these great draft picks. I mean, they played one game. We might find out that Patrick Queen isn't very good over the next 2 months for all we know. I don't think that's the case. I think he is good. I don't know how good he's going to be as a rookie or over the course of his career. But I think to the point you just made, and I'd be remiss if I didn't bring this up, John Harbaugh at this point now, 10-3 in season openers. Now, he's had a lot of good teams over those 13 years. Even the worst teams were still, 2015 injury-plagued year aside, were still pretty good overall. But it just speaks to how well prepared they are coming out of the gate. And I think that was even more of an advantage for them this year. I'm not predicting the Browns. I wasn't predicting the Browns to be very good. Do I think the Browns can they be better than they were in Week 1? Sure. I mean, they have a new head coach and lots of new moving parts that they're trying to figure out. But the Ravens' continuity that they had was an even greater advantage than normal. And to come in and play the way that they did without a preseason, with an abbreviated number of training camp practices. I mean, it speaks very highly of the organization, and to have that many rookies, regardless of what their ultimate ceiling will be, to have that many rookies that were deemed good enough to play, even if they only played a little bit, that's saying something. Because in this year, and I'm not alone in this opinion, my expectations for rookies around the league are not incredibly high because of all the challenges that we just mentioned. So when you have three rookies who started and other rookies who played a meaningful role, I mean, that's pretty impressive for all phases of the organization, whether you're talking about the coaching staff, the scouts, Eric DeCosta as the general manager. I mean, they clearly identified some talent that they liked, and clearly they liked enough that they came in and were deemed worthy enough to play, and the coaches were able to coach them up to a point where Tyree Phillips could start Week 1 as a third-round rookie. Now, we'll see how the next 4 weeks go in that way, and who knows, maybe he struggles, and a month from now, Patrick McCarry's at right guard. I mean, I'm not going to crown anyone in that way, but the fact that these rookies were deemed good enough to step in and play Week 1 for a team that's as much of a contender as this one is, that reflects very well on all areas of the organization.
He is Baltimore Luke, and Luke at WNST.net. We are merging our sports brand with Baltimore Positive. It's a new thing. I'm 30 years into this. It's the first time I've done a new thing in a long while. I'm very excited about it. We're going to be launching that at some point later on in the week when we get all the things working the way they should be working. But we're getting there. I've been screenshotting some stuff and having some fun as well with the new logo that involves a crab. Not quite like my crab video. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. To all of our sponsors in Planet Fitness and Royal Farms and Sporticulture with the Magma lamp, and the Magma is now flowing here on the purple base. You can find that at Sporticulture. And our friends at Taharka making the ice cream that's keeping me skinny for my trip to Houston this week. We are WNST.net, AM 1570. Stick with us. We got a lot of things going on here at Baltimore Positive.